Afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We'd really like to start on time because I think we all of us have a very strict time schedule to keep. So just to say welcome, it's really my great pleasure to welcome you to the first quarterly informal briefing on the Global Compact on Refugees of 2024. La traduction est disponible en anglais et en français. Si vous êtes en ligne, veuillez sélectionner votre langue préférée en utilisant le bouton interprétation sur Zoom, s'il vous plaît. I would like to now briefly introduce the people on the podium and go over the agenda. So we have, of course, His Excellency Jörg Glauber, the Ambassador and Permanent Representative of Switzerland to the United Nations in Geneva. He and I will be delivering the opening remarks. Then on my right, Ms. Parveen Ali, who's the Senior Policy Advisor and Head of the Global Compact on Refugees Coordination Team of UNHCR, who will present the outcomes of the Global Refugee Forum of 2023. And then to my far right, Mr. Ziad Ayad, Senior Policy Officer, Global Compact on Refugee Coordination Team as well, who will be presenting the roadmap to the high-level officials meeting scheduled for December 2025. Ambassador Lowell will then open the floor for discussion and interventions. During the discussion, we look forward to hearing your feedback on the roadmap and also to hear your plans as pledging entities and leaders of multi-stakeholder pledges on follow-up and implementation. After the close of discussion, I will deliver closing remarks before joining the meeting. And of course, also joining us on the podium on the far left is Ms. Mercedes Yacoubi, who belongs to the governance service of UNHCR and who is graciously supporting us as the secretary for the briefing. Before I pass the floor to His Excellency, the Ambassador Jörg Glauber, to give his introductory remarks, I want to express our gratitude to the International Labour Organization for hosting us today and for the remaining briefings this year. On behalf of ILO, I would also like to inform you that the participants in today's briefing are invited to visit a photo exhibition located here at ILO in the colonnades entitled Portraits from Prospects, depicting the aspirations and personal journeys towards improved self-reliance and resilience of the individuals from both refugee and host communities. I hope you do take the time out to visit that exhibition. With that, thank you, and I now invite Ambassador Lauber to deliver his opening remarks. Over to you, Ambassador.
Thank you very much, Excellence. Mesdames et Messieurs, j'aimerais tout d'abord vous souhaiter à toutes et à tous une chaleureuse bienvenue à ce premier briefing informel en 2024 sur le Pacte mondial des réfugiés que la Suisse a l'honneur de co-présider avec le HCR. Today's briefing is our first gathering since the Global Refugee Forum in 2023. It is also our first meeting with UNHCR's new Assistant High Commissioner for Protection, Ruvendrini Meniktivela, and on behalf of everyone here in the room and online, I'd like to extend a special welcome to you. Thank you very much. Great to see you. Colleagues, today's meeting is an opportunity to hear about the outcome of the recent GRF, which I think you all agree with me was a remarkable achievement indeed. We also want to discuss the roadmap that we have all contributed to in terms of how we carry forward the pledges and commitments over the coming 2 years to achieve a tangible impact on the ground. To this end, we hope to hear feedback from all of you on the outcomes and the roadmap, but also your ideas and plans as leaders of multi-stakeholder pledges for implementation and follow-through. I think I speak on behalf of everyone in saying that the GRF 2023 succeeded in mobilizing and uniting the international community in support of refugees. We see that in terms of the event itself, with a very strong representation of states, but also a huge diversity of other stakeholders. We see it also in terms of the substance that emerged through the over 1,700 pledges. And I hope you all agree when I describe the forum as modern multilateralism in action, bringing together a diverse set of stakeholders to tackle the global challenge of displacement through meaningful commitments. As we look ahead to the high-level officials meeting in 2027, our focus must be on sustaining momentum to deliver on the pledges advanced at the GRF. We as Switzerland invite all stakeholders to redouble their efforts to take concrete steps in support of refugees and the countries and communities hosting them. The high-level officials meeting will be a key moment to take stock of where we stand across the pledges made at the GRF, but also to recognize new pledges made in the meantime and good practices that are emerging. It is in this way that we can ensure that we continue to breathe life into the Global Compact. And on that note, I thank you all for your participation today and would now give the floor back to the Assistant High Commissioner for Protection. The floor is yours, please.
Thank you, Excellency. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, it's with great pleasure that I extend a warm welcome to you to the first of our 4 informal briefings on the GCR this year. Allow me to begin by expressing my gratitude to Ambassador Lauber for his very insightful opening remarks and to Switzerland for its unwavering commitment as the official GRF co-host. With almost 4 months having passed since the second GRF, I also would like to convey my deepest appreciation to the hundreds of states and multi-stakeholder partners for their invaluable contributions to the event, both in terms of participation and the bold announcements made. The forum was seen by many, as the Ambassador said, as a great success in terms of the diversity and dynamism of the event, the pledges made, and the partnerships forged. Despite a challenging geopolitical landscape, many noted that it built a stronger community in a spirit of constructive engagement and unity around a common purpose. It also demonstrated that the Global Compact is a powerful tool for fostering international solidarity and effective cooperation. A detailed summary of the events, of the outcomes will be presented shortly by Parveen, but allow me to speak to a few notable highlights that we should all be proud of. One of the standout features of the GRF was the collective efforts of partners within the GCR, resulting in the launch of 47 multi-stakeholder pledges. The remarkable level of support from member states and other stakeholders across the 15 stakeholder groups was truly inspiring. We extend our heartfelt gratitude to those who actively participated in their development and committed to ensuring that these multi-stakeholder pledges are sustainable, transformative, and impactful. As many of you know, more than 1,700 pledges were recorded, as the Ambassador has also noted, surpassing the first Global Refugee Forum. Of these pledges, some 1,300 were made in support of one or more multi-stakeholder pledges. In a truly whole-of-society fashion, 1/3 of the pledges were made by states, and the rest by other stakeholders, including development actors, faith groups, companies, foundations, NGOs, UN agencies, and others. Moreover, the number of non-state actors making pledges tripled from some 200 at the first GRF in 2019 to more than 650 last December. These takeaways and many more have been captured in the outcome document, which we are officially launching today. Looking ahead, it will remain imperative that we maintain the momentum built through the GRF and ensure that the pledges are implemented and that host country policy commitments in support of protection, inclusion, and solutions are adequately supported and realized. To this end, we look forward to our next milestone, the high-level officials meeting in December 2025, where the more than 100 policy commitments made by low and middle-income host countries and countries of origin will be the focus of our collective action. Ziad will shortly present the preliminary roadmap to the high-level officials meeting, which will set out how we aim to facilitate this at the country, regional, and global levels. And we look forward to hearing your reflections on this. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, your leadership in the overall follow-up process is paramount as we navigate the post-GRF landscape. Sustaining momentum is a collective responsibility, necessitating ongoing pledge implementation and active engagement in the multi-stakeholder process. This includes leveraging your networks both domestically and regionally for follow-up activities and effectively communicating the impacts of your efforts. On that note, I would like to now give the floor to Ms. Parveen Ali to present in more detail the outcomes of the GRF 2023. I also want to underline that Parveen's tenure will be coming to an end in early April, so this will be her last informal briefing together with all of you. Parveen, over to you.
Thank you very much, Ruben, and thank you for the opportunity to brief you today. The outcome document for the Global Refugee Forum 2023 has just gone live online on our website. So you'll be able to find this following this briefing in order to have a more detailed read at that stage. But I thought that what we would do is just start by highlighting some of the key takeaways, some of which the Assistant High Commissioner has just mentioned, and to share with you also some of the outcomes of the consultations that we've had with all of you and with many of our additional partners in the field and with colleagues who have been engaged in various aspects of the GRF preparations on what we need to think about in moving ahead on the implementation of the pledges. But before starting that, I just wanted to also say a huge thank you to everyone in this room for your engagement in the preparations for the Global Refugee Forum. There's no way, I think, that we could have accomplished what we did on our own. And it was really with the collective engagement of all of the governments here, all of our partners, all of the many stakeholders who joined us from the field that really made it truly a whole of society effort and a success. And having now been through 2 global refugee fora and accompanied the process since the inception of the New York Declaration, I've been reflecting a little bit on, how far we have managed to come as an international community around this effort over the years since 2016. And I'm so encouraged by what came out of the GRF in December of last year. I think it really enabled us to put in place the building blocks for taking this forward to much more transformative action in the future. It helped us to put in place the architecture needed to do things differently, to do things in as smart a way as possible with the resources that we have at our disposal, and to really find ways to leverage and support the policy commitments that have been made by low and middle income host countries and countries of origin. I think we have fantastic foundation to build on. So I'm very encouraged by this and I feel like I'm able to leave this process in a very good note. And I fully trust in the ability of everyone in this room and everybody online and everyone who has contributed to really take this forward. We've really demonstrated that it takes a village to raise a child, and we've managed to really grow this process as a group. So I just wanted to say a huge thank you to you for that. Looking ahead now to the outcome document and sharing with you some of the key takeaways. As many of you know and have probably heard in other contexts, it was really truly a whole of society event and moment for all of us, not only here in Geneva, but even abroad. So we had more than 4,000 people participate participate in person. More than half of the participants were high-level attendees at the ministerial level or above, and we had more than 10,000 people join the event online. So this was really a huge growth from what we saw with the first Global Refugee Forum in 2019, and I think it really showed that we have managed to sustain and grow political engagement in this process and ownership of it. We were also really encouraged by the number of refugees and stateless persons who participated in the preparations for the Global Refugee Forum, not only in the event itself, which was truly a success, I think, but also in the development of the pledges, in the consultations on the structure of the program, in the work with governments and other partners around serving as advisors on delegations. There were many, many ways that refugees and stateless participants engaged. We had more than 320 refugees and stateless persons participating in the GRF this time. This was an increase from the 70 that we had in 2019, so quite a growth in engagement. I should say that we're also very grateful to the government of Switzerland for financially supporting the participation of many of these refugees in the process. This was really what helped to make it a success and ensure that they were able to participate in a meaningful way. We had them speaking in more than 88% of the high-level events over the course of the 3 days. And many refugees and stateless persons were engaged in announcing the multi-stakeholder pledges in plenary. So we're very grateful to the pledge leaders who gave that opportunity for the refugee participants to showcase the whole of society approach in action. If we can go to the next slide. I also wanted to speak a little bit about the events, just to recap what we did together over those 3 days. First, we had 40 high-level events that were held in the Palexpo, convening governments and different partners around some of the key outcomes that we were hoping to achieve through the Global Refugee Forum. And many of these events were organized particularly around the multi-stakeholder pledges that were announced, the thematic areas such as economic inclusion, education, health, gender, the humanitarian development peace nexus, and many others. They were also organized around specific regions, and we had really important multi-stakeholder pledges announced in particular in support of particular displacement situations, such as the Rohingya situation, but also in the context of the Cartagena Plus 40 process, IGAD, and others. We had also more than 40 partners and governments contribute and share good practices and progress on the pledges that they made since 2019 for our exhibition, and more than 42 presentations in our speakers corner, many of which were made by refugees and stateless persons, and provided a kind of dynamic moment to stop on the way to different events to listen to these TED Talk style speeches. If we go to the next slide, you can see also that we had quite a bit of coverage around our communications. UNHCR has a refugee journalism mentorship program, and 14 refugee mentees from this program participated as journalists in the event. We had quite a bit of online GRF content, more than 80 million views, and a 5-fold increase in engagement around the GCR digital platform, which serves as our one-stop shop for everything related to the Global Compact, and is a great place to find information about good practices, upcoming events, and other aspects of the GCR. And we also had a social media zone for VIPs, where more than 60 VIPs participated from governments, partners, and the private sector and others. In terms of the communications, we had more than 6,000 different pieces of global media mentioning the GRF in 118 different countries, 46 languages. There was a lot of engagement around social media with many, many posts mentioning the GRF from many different actors. And we had important media and content partnerships that helped us to advance in the messaging. But what was really most notable about the communications analysis that we did was that there was a 600% increase in the volume of content that featured refugee voices. And we really see this as key to maintaining the momentum, the engagement, and the confidence in the process. So we're really, really pleased to see how much we have been able to amplify and the voices of refugees, and really ensure that refugees are at the center of all of the conversations that we have around the compact. If you go to the next slide, you can see also that on the pledges side, as the Assistant High Commissioner mentioned, a third of the pledges were made by governments. But for the pledges that were made by non-state actors, we saw the number of non-state actors triple since the Global Refugee Forum in 2019. These are non-state actors that made pledges. So we were very encouraged by this. It shows that the 15 stakeholder groups that are set out in the GCR have really stepped up and thought in a very thoughtful way, thinking about how they can contribute their complementary strengths to the multi-stakeholder pledging process. And currently in our database, we now have around 1,750 pledges, but they're still coming in. So for those of you that made announcements of pledges at the GRF that have not yet submitted them, please do so that we can recognize this, track progress, and make sure that it's reflected in our ongoing planning. If you go to the next slide, you can also see that most of the pledges that were made in support of the 47 multi-stakeholder pledges that the Assistant High Commissioner just mentioned. And the I think the multi-stakeholder pledge that received the most support through the individual contributions was a pledge around economic inclusion and social protection. We also had a significant number of pledges made in support of inclusion in health systems and mental health and psychosocial support. We had more than 100 different cities contribute to the process and join in, and they made a city's pledge. And on the protection side, we were really encouraged to see that the pledge that it has on the global legal community has grown since 2019, where they committed 1 million hours of pro bono legal services for refugees, stateless persons, and governments and others engaged on asylum and protection. We're also really encouraged by the UN Common Pledge. You may recall that in 2019, the UN Common Pledge was first announced. It had a broad policy objective around inclusion of refugees and displacement considerations in planning of UN agencies. This pledge really grew and became something I think quite significant that really puts in place what we need to take the pledges forward at country level. We had 47 country teams make specific pledges around inclusion in their specific country contexts, and this included 18 different UN agencies. So we really see this framework as a really important way to ensure continued interagency engagement in supporting the implementation of policy commitments made by host countries and countries of origin at country level. We also had more than 100 pledges that were made by low and middle income countries. And these are policy pledges that we really will now focus on over the coming 2 years for mobilizing support. The idea really is that we will play a role in linking the multi-stakeholder pledges made by governments and partners together with the governments that made policy pledges to see how the multi-stakeholder pledges could be one channel for providing partnership, engagement, and support for the implementation of these policies to protect, to include, and find solutions for refugees. And critically, 9% of all of the pledges that were made included a financial component. And I think this is really a reflection of an attempt by many of our pledging entities to make their pledges smart, meaning that they were, if they were programmatic pledges, they were accompanied by a cost analysis. Some of them were direct financial contributions around specific themes, and they took many different kinds of forms. But I think what this enables us to do is really assess more closely what more is needed to then, translate these kinds of commitments into impacts on the ground. And finally, on the outcomes of the pledges, we saw more than 2.2 billion in core financial contributions made in support of refugee hosting countries. You'll see here that national and local governments made about 71% of these pledges, but we also saw significant financial pledges made by the private sector, by international organizations, and also by civil society. This, of course, does not include the ongoing financial contributions made by many of our large development actors who have included refugee considerations in their planning, in their multi-year planning over the coming years. But I think this is a really good foundation to start with in thinking about how we can build on it and make sure that we fully capture the contributions that are being made across the board. And then finally, a final moment on the pledges. These are the multi-stakeholder pledges that were announced at the Global Refugee Forum. And if you'll recall, we had identified some key outcomes that we wanted to achieve collectively by the time of the GRF. The first one was really focused on easing pressure around the first objective of the compact, particularly through financing and climate action. The second one was on strengthening systems for inclusion and focusing on self-reliance through economic inclusion and social protection. We had a strong focus on third country solutions with a lot of promising support in the areas of skills-based pathways, as well as travel documents for refugees. And we had some very notable pledges around support for conditions in countries of origin, particularly the peace building and conflict prevention pledge that many of you were engaged in. So we have organized the pledges that we received under these kind of big outcomes that we were hoping to achieve through the GRF. We also included the pledges that were made to enable progress across the 4 objectives, whether they were related to partnerships or protection or specific regional approaches. And this framing, while of course many of the pledges that were made will cut across the different objectives, this is the framing that we would like to use to structure the follow-up conversations and stock taking. So as Ziad will speak to in a moment, there will be opportunities for all of these pledges and those of you who are leading them to report on progress being made around the specific pledges. And we'll be in ongoing conversations with all of the pledge leaders about how best to and the most meaningful way to achieve this. This will also be the framing for the high-level officials meeting in 2025. So this is how we would really like to capture and consolidate all of the really important work that went into designing and making these pledges quite smart moving ahead. So over the past 4 months, we've been thinking about how we now take this process forward. We've been engaged in a number of conversations with many of you. We've been engaged in conversations at capital level, as well as with many of our partners, to really identify what's needed to build on this process. And there are a few key reflections that I wanted to capture and recommendations for the way forward. And I thought I would share those just to provide a bit of a foundation and context for how we then used these to develop the roadmap to the high-level officials meeting, which of course is an ongoing living document and will continue to be co-shaped together with you as we clarify how we'll be taking the pledges forward. The first, though, is that we really need to see the Global Refugee Forum and the high-level officials meeting as more than events. These aren't just events that we have once every 4 years and then we leave and we're finished and we don't think about it for another 4 years. They're really key benchmarks in a longer-term policy process for advancing protection, inclusion, and solutions for refugees and host communities. So we need to think about how these 2 events can really help us to advance policy objectives. We also need to focus on the key outcomes, which I mentioned, that we would like to achieve. So the high-level officials meeting needs to be a time when we report, take stock of progress, and think about how far we actually got in realizing the outcomes that we had all agreed to. The low and middle income host countries and countries of origin that made policy commitments need to be the center of gravity for support. So this will really be a key focus of our pledge follow-up process and something that we need to continuously think about, particularly for those of you who are leading on some of the multi-stakeholder pledges, how you can most meaningfully link up to these. Also, on the next slide, we need to ensure that there's complementarity between what we do at country level, what we do at the regional level, and at the global level to follow up on the pledges. Many of the multi-stakeholder pledges are either global and thematic in focus, or they have a specific refugee situation that they're focusing on. We need to find a way to link that thematic focus to the policy commitments that were made at country level. So this is what a lot of the thinking has been behind the roadmap. We also need to ensure they're smart. So many of the pledges that were made were very smart. They were quantifiable. They had clear targets. They had clear, ambitious policy objectives. Some of them are more aspirational. And over the next 2 years, we have an opportunity to really further clarify and concretize those pledges so that we can report tangible progress against them. Another important recommendation that we are planning to implement is to really reinforce that the pledging timeline is not just the 2 or 3 days of the event in December. It's a continuously open process. And what we would like to encourage is that those governments, donors, and other partners who were not able to make commitments because their budgetary cycles didn't align with the GCR process and GRF events, to consider reflecting the contributions they make over the next 2 years as pledges so that we can really capture that, recognize it, and give it visibility at the high-level officials meeting. We hope that this will help to also enable us to continue having conversations, when budgetary cycles permit, about how we can further channel and target support for host country policy pledges. And finally, we need to make sure that the GCR process doesn't stand alone. It's part of a broader multi-stakeholder, multilateral process. Displacement touches on so many other areas that we are all engaged in as an international community, from the SDGs to the HLPF, the Summit of the Future, COP, the G7, the G20, and many others. And the more that we can do to really include messaging on the compact, the opportunities that it offers, the transformations we're trying to achieve through it in the way we work on refugee situations, the more we can include references to specific relevant pledges in these other multilateral processes, the more we can ensure that displacement remains high on the political radar in the agenda. And this is quite a critical piece that we'll be discussing with many of the pledge leaders, and we will continue to support as well from our side. So that's just the top line findings and outcomes of the GRF. But please do visit and download the document from our website after this briefing for a much more detailed analysis, and we're happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Parveen. And I'd like to now give the floor to Ziad, who will be also, by the way, serving as interim head of the GCR team following Parveen's departure until her successor arrives. Ziad, over to you to present the roadmap for the high-level officials meeting.
Thank you, Reuven. Thank you, Parveen. Good afternoon, colleagues, distinguished delegates. Indeed, building on the outcomes that Parveen just presented, as well as these key considerations and the framing of the high-level outcomes, we envisage, next slide, please, a four-pronged approach towards the roadmap to the high-level officials meeting, with a few concrete actions built within each of these. And these are to be translated at the country, regional, and global levels, really aimed at maximizing opportunities for pledge implementation and advancing policies, priorities leveraged through the overall process. So speaking to the first point about analyzing and prioritizing pledges for follow-up, based on the 1,700 pledges, the 40 plus multi-stakeholder pledges, this is very much focused on identifying areas for further engagement, linkages, identifying existing and new linkages to the multi-stakeholder pledges, but also opportunities for support for policy pledges made by host countries, countries of origin, principally by way of matching. So this has been an ongoing process. The analysis included a verification exercise, a cleanup exercise, and it has provided us a good database to work with to establish the follow-up process. Secondly, the roadmap will focus on developing a follow-up plan to facilitate pledge implementation at the country, regional, and global levels. And these will be against tangible targets, benchmarks, and the identification of multi-stakeholder modalities or governance structures, and we're mindful that governance structures already exist against many of these. Also to support in convening governments and stakeholders to collaborate on pledge implementation and take stock on progress. So this is one of the points that we really want to kind of stress and emphasize, that the multi-stakeholder pledge process will be a joint process that will be co-led, co-facilitated, and co-catalyzed together between UNHCR and the pledge leads. Thirdly, this is something that will also be happening on an ongoing basis. The roadmap will communicate progress and share good practices on an ongoing basis, demonstrating progress against the implementation of the GCR, demonstrating progress against the implementation of the individual pledges and the multi-stakeholder pledge process overall. And then lastly, the proposed roadmap leading to the high-level officials meeting will contribute to the development of the high-level officials meeting event program itself. So this is, of course, will continue to be a consultative process together with states and other stakeholders through this forum and others as well, to ensure that the content of the event itself reflects policy priorities, pledge progress, and takeaways from stock taking. And of course, in order to do so, we will maintain a light voluntary reporting process, very much inspired by the process that we had in years prior. So many of you would know that we have a Salesforce system where that's continuously open and receives updates at any time. So pledging entities are invited at any time to provide updates on their pledges, to submit new pledges, to make any revisions to pledges through the existing system, but also through the GCR coordination team. As many of you will also recall, on a biannual basis, we reach out to pledging entities by way of a bespoke email communication that's focused on soliciting progress updates when they exist. So this is to give us a sense if the pledges are in progress, they're in the planning phase, or they have been fulfilled. And the results of this biannual outreach through the reporting process is reflected in what we call a snapshot. So you'll hear from us twice a year, where we provide a sort of a soft update and an analysis on the pledges, the progress that's been made, and then use that, of course, as the basis for how we communicate and how we plan the follow-up process moving forward. And we expect the biannual outreach to be in May and October this year. And then perhaps I would say equally important is the in-depth stock taking on pledge progress. The high-level officials meeting is principally, or there's a strong focus on stock taking, on building on the lessons that have been learned. So over the next 2 years, reporting will also be reflected through the various in-depth stock taking exercises on the pledge progress. These will be done by way of, in the form of the multi-stakeholder pledges themselves and their individual and respective governance structures, but also by way of potential regional roundtables and relevant and bespoke country-level multi-stakeholder mechanisms. And of course, as Praveen said, we would aim to build on existing structures where possible, rather than creating parallel stock-taking processes. In terms of roles, UNHCR will maintain and continue its facilitation role of the overall process, but also in the roadmap towards the high-level officials meeting. And there are a few points that we just wanted to indicate. So one is that we will continue to provide support with the overall follow-up process at the country level, at the regional level, and at the global level. So this is one thing that will be fundamental to the work of UNHCR as a whole, but specifically the GCR coordination team. It is a decentralized process within UNHCR, as it is decentralized across many of the other pledging entities themselves. We also will, the role that we'll be playing is developing in cooperation with the respective pledge leads, work plans. So I just mentioned this briefly previously, work plans to support pledge implementation and efforts towards matching. So work plans are not, against the individual multi-stakeholder pledges, are not intended to be sort of a laborious exercise, but just a bit of a sense of, against these individual multi-stakeholder pledges, where are we going? What are the political ambitions? Can we truly take concrete steps to transform the landscape in a particular thematic area or in a situation? So this is what's really intended. This is what we mean when we speak of work plans. Of course, we'll provide guidance on the stock taking, on progress, opportunities, and needs. We'll continue to mainstream the GCR and pledge follow-up and multilateral and regional processes, protection and solution strategies, and reporting. And then lastly, in terms of UNHCR's facilitation role, in the actual preparations for the high-level officials meeting itself, to ensure its strategic content, regional and strategic and stakeholder diversity, we will consult internally, but also externally with partners. And in terms of what our envisaged expectations are for the pledge leaders themselves, it's, if anything, it's sort of the other side of the same coin, demonstrating kind of the hand-in-glove operation. But we will continue to encourage pledge leaders of the respective multi-stakeholder pledges to engage boldly in the follow-up process, also at the country, regional, and global levels, depending on the types of pledges that were made, depending on the existing infrastructures and processes you have in place. Of course, working closely with us, co-leading these work plans of identifying where the dynamic works best, and building on kind of the existing knowledge base that exists through the pledge leads and the contributors. Mobilizing further, so we would envisage that the pledge leaders could play a role of mobilizing further support on pledges. As Praveen said, the pledging process is an ongoing one. It wasn't one that was unique to the GRF. If there is scope or there is benefit or value for additional pledge being mobilized in support of a particular multi-stakeholder area, that's something that's also encouraged by the multi-stakeholder pledge leads. Of course, and it goes without saying, and this was indicated by the Assistant High Commissioner for Protection, about leading by example in the pledge implementation. Of course, and this is a message that's resonated and we've said on multiple occasions since the first GRF. We would similarly encourage pledge leads to advocate for the GCR and the GRF kind of pledge follow-up process to be embedded in the existing multilateral and regional processes. And of course, we would definitely benefit from the insights, the knowledge of the pledge leads on advising us on high-level official meeting preparations to demonstrate outcomes and impact. And then lastly, 2 slides on the global timeline and how we intend to get there. So today's briefing, as you know, is focused on presenting the GRF outcome document and the high-level officials meeting roadmap. The next 3 briefings, as you will see, are organized around key outcomes, the same outcomes that Praveen spoke to in the high-level framings, that we'd like to focus the next 3 informal briefings on. So the first one in June will be focused on easing pressures. So this is everything from quality financing to climate. The second informal briefing in September, which will be focused on inclusion and self-reliance, and this ranges everything from health to education to economic inclusion and all the multi-stakeholder pledges that were indicated in the table that Praveen presented. And then lastly, of course, in December, we will convene the 4th informal briefing focused on solutions. So these are third country solutions as well as solutions in country of origin and in hosting countries. And what is unique, of course, to these 3 briefings is that the multi-stakeholder pledge leads will be invited to present at one of these briefings, the relevant briefings, setting out work plans, what you hope to achieve by the 2025 high-level officials meeting, and of course, contribute what is contributed thus far and to provide a progress update. And of course, states and other stakeholders will also be encouraged to participate and share individual progress. So it's not only unique to that. And the next slide, please. For next year, 2025, UNHCR will be convening 3 preparatory meetings for the high-level officials meeting that will serve as a consultative mechanism to speak to the focus of the event, the program, the intended outcomes, very similar to the process that was carried out prior. We intend to launch the GCR indicator report in October, and then the final informal briefing on high-level officials meeting logistics will be held in November, with the aim of the high-level officials meeting itself being held in December, the week of December 15th in 2025. You'll take note that we'll be seeing a series of regional and country level stock takings over the next 2 years. Of course, this will be an embedded process, a country level process, a regional process, and a global process. I thank you for your attention. We look forward to your close engagement, and I pass back to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Parveen and Ziad, for the presentations. We will now proceed to the discussion portion of the meeting, and I pass to Ambassador Lauber to moderate this session.
Thank you much, Ruben. Thank you, Praveen and Ziad, for your presentations. En effet, nous allons maintenant donner la parole aux participantes et participants. Je suis sûr que vous avez très peu de patience qui reste, mais vous avez maintenant l'occasion. Si vous souhaitez intervenir, merci de lever votre plaque nominative. Le moment, c'est maintenant. Pour les participantes, participants en ligne qui souhaitent intervenir, veuillez l'indiquer dans le chat et vous serez ajouté à la liste des orateurs. S'il vous plaît, limitez vos remarques à 3 minutes afin de laisser du temps aux autres participants. Nous ferons notre mieux pour prendre en compte autant d'interventions que possible dans le temps imparti pour cette session. Il en reste à peu près 60 minutes. Alors, ça veut dire que je serai assez sévère. 3 minutes après, je vais vous couper. Vous connaissez bien les pratiques pour ceux qui participent au Conseil des droits de l'homme. On a une liste qui commence à se désigner. Non, pas encore. Ouais, par hasard, c'est la France qui commence, suivie par la Jordanie et les prochains vont s'annoncer bientôt. La France, vous avez la parole. 3 minutes. Merci beaucoup.
Merci. Madame la haute commissaire assistante, monsieur l'ambassadeur, mesdames et messieurs, je crois que nous pouvons tous être fiers de ce que nous avons accompli ensemble il y a 3 mois lors du 2e Forum mondial sur les réfugiés. Le HCR vient de nous rappeler combien ce forum a été un succès en matière de participation comme de financement. La France remercie le HCR pour la feuille de route qui vient d'être présentée. Vous pouvez bien sûr compter sur notre engagement continu dans ce processus en tant que coparrain du forum. La cause des réfugiés sera ainsi mise à l'honneur cet été lors des Jeux olympiques de Paris, auxquels participera une délégation de réfugiés qui sera menée par Madame Massoma Alizada, une athlète réfugiée qui vit et s'entraîne en France et qui faisait déjà partie de la délégation française lors du Forum mondial. Vous pouvez aussi compter sur la France pour continuer à faire vivre l'initiative avec elle pour la protection et l'inclusion des femmes réfugiées sur l'ensemble de leur parcours d'exil. Nous remercions tous les partenaires institutionnels et privés qui ont rejoint cette initiative. Nous réaliserons des points d'étape pour mesurer nos progrès dans la mise en œuvre de nos engagements. Mesdames et messieurs, nous sommes bien conscients que la mise en œuvre du pacte mondial pour les réfugiés
lives it's going to change, the tangible difference towards all the 4 objectives of the Global Compact on Refugees. My government is very awake to the fact that the GRF is a creature or a daughter of the GCR. And we are happy to have listened from Ziad on the fact that you've focused the roadmap on the reporting part to ensure on how each of those objectives is going to be reported on, especially in regards to the pledges made. We share the same view with Jordan when we say it's not just mere pledges, it's not just a mere promise, it's a commitment by government. And it's on this that we would have a proposal, because as a co-convener and as a government that was involved in this very actively, there's a genuine confusion also around what a pledge is or how to pledge and the titles we give them. The powerful words as big as multi-stakeholder seem big, but then when you unpack them in there should be a real commitment. Are there things that we could learn and guide states or whoever party that is willing to do this better? Could we learn from the pledging conference that we do annually on the fact that you have a form, a tailored style of what constitutes probably a financial pledge or a technical pledge with a timeline? Are there things that we could learn to guide states more so that in the next GRF, there's a real possibility and it will make it easy to be able to analyze the pledges that have been made? Because as a government, we are also struggling to be able to follow up with governments that have pledged or different parties that have pledged. So we hope that we could look inward and see how to improve on exactly document on what would constitute a pledge so that governments or different pledging entities fill into those forms. That said, the reporting mechanism as well. We've had you saying that we'll have the multi-stakeholders report on how far they have gone with their pledges. We really also emphasize on the individual states. I know you can't put pressure on a sovereign state, but it's as good as that. If Uganda made a policy pledge, you have country offices. You should be contacting your country offices to give you reports so that you actually inform us in the different forums and say, as far as we are concerned, the pledges that were made in Eastern Horn of Africa have gone this far. You don't have to wait for the states to tell you, what if we don't have much to report? You need to call us to book to what we pledged. And I think you have institutions in place like your country offices to be able to give you that feedback. And as a co-convener, we insist that policy pledges were and that we follow up whether indeed they have been matched or not. I could speak on and on, but finally, I want to also extend my deepest thanks to Paveen. Your calm, your poise, your profession is mind-blowing. I would wish I had a quarter of that. I'm sure I would be far away in this career, but you have been amazing to the whole process. The GRF was very lucky to have you in that position. I don't think excellence just chose you, but you actually accepted to be chosen by excellence. You've been amazing, and we wish you nothing but the very best.
Thank you very much. And I'm not sure whether we have a connection problem, but I don't have any states asking for the floor at this point. So my next speakers on the list are the International Labour Organization, followed by the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. ILO, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Chair. On behalf of the ILO, I just want to again reiterate our own welcome and just say how pleased we are to be hosting this meeting on our premises, especially following discussions last December that highlighted the crucial importance of decent work and livelihoods as part of any durable solution. To help make this a reality, the ILO's guiding principles on the access of refugees and other forcibly displaced persons to the labor market, which was adopted by its constituents in 2016, is available for your reference as a basis for formulating policy responses. The ILO certainly stands ready to assist any member states and social partners who wish to implement these guidelines. This particular meeting is also timely for us as ILO since we are working on mapping out pledges, especially those that are most relevant to our mandate and the pledges that we also made institutionally. This will also be pursued through our close involvement in the Task Force on Economic Inclusion and Social Protection as co-convener of the Multi-Stakeholder Pledge on EISP. Coinciding with the lead up to the 2025 high-level officials meeting is also the implementation of the ILO UNHCR Joint Action Plan for 2023 to 2025, which has 3 overarching goals: improved governance, strengthening implementation of rights at work, and increased opportunities for jobs, livelihoods, skills, and lifelong learning. And then just a quick little promo, since I'm sure many of you just shuffled directly down here to the basement for the meeting today. But we'd also invite all of you before you depart to visit the photo exhibit that we have currently in the hallway, the colonnade with a row of flags. If you haven't seen it, just one floor up. It's close to the entrance, but that's entitled Portraits from Prospects. It's a photo exhibition that depicts the aspirations and the personal journeys towards self-reliance and resilience of individuals from both host and refugee communities under our Prospects program, which is generally supported by the Dutch government. Thank you so much again for joining us here today. Again, we're delighted that we were able to host. Thanks so much, and we look forward to all of the follow-up. Thank you.
And Q&A should indeed have started by thanking you for having us here today. OHCHR is next, followed by Asilex OHCHR.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Lauber, for giving us the opportunity to speak. On behalf of the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, we stand together with the other 17 UN agencies that complete the UN entity pledges alongside the 47 UN country teams in the Common Pledge. And that, I think, is a mechanism through which I'm just responding is not the right word, reacting to what's been said by some of the speakers before. So picking up on what our distinguished colleague from Uganda said, through the UN Common Pledge, there are many mechanisms in existence in country that will allow us to work together with states to measure and see the impact of that pledge, including with timelines and real outcomes. So that is a pledge that we, and I think many of the other UN entities, are very proud to be a part of. There are several other pledges that OHCHR committed to, but now is not the time to speak about us and our pledges. All of the pledges, I would say, like the concept of human rights itself, are universal and indivisible in the sense that there is no hierarchy of pledges. Every pledge, big or small, no matter what the source, if made, again, I echo what our colleague from Uganda was saying, if made genuinely with a sense of commitment rather than just ticking a box, will go to help refugees. And I say there is no hierarchy, but there is one pledge on which OHCHR and the special procedures of the Human Rights Council are particularly proud. So if you will indulge me, I will just mention it here, Ambassador Lauber. It's the PIERR, another new acronym for us all, the Platform of Independent Experts on Refugee Rights. And this one we are particularly proud of, and we believe that it will be very helpful and significant in service to refugees, civil society, and states as a platform of human rights experts to work towards the attainment of human rights being the physical, concrete manifestation of protection and solutions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. PIERR. You heard it here first. Remember it. Asilex speaking on behalf of Legal Community Pledge, followed by Oxfam International. Asilex, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, for giving us the floor. As a member of the core group of NGOs, RLOs, and law firms that guide the direction of the multi-stakeholder Legal Community Pledge, I am pleased to provide an update on the pledge's progress. Today, more than ever, the need for legal information and assistance for refugees, stateless, and other displaced people is critical. Whether it is accessing basic rights, navigating asylum systems, or seeking legal pathways to safety, the support provided by legal actors is indispensable. At the GRF in December, signatories of the 2023 Legal Community Pledge came together to commit to take action for and with displaced people to increase legal assistance and to facilitate improvements to the systems through which rights, justice, and solutions are accessed. Today, I am delighted to share that the 2023 Multi-Stakeholder Pledge the Multi-Stakeholder Legal Community Pledge has 116 signatories. garnering commitments from 50 NGOs, including both national and international, 47 law firms, 13 RLOs, 4 academic institutions, 2 states, Australia and Chile, and UNDP. This diverse coalition is making a meaningful impact across the globe with involvement and commitments to advance access to legal assistance, empowerment, and advocacy in every region, and with an ultimate goal of reaching more than 1 million displaced people by the next GRF. Collectively, pledge signatories have also committed to provide over 1 million pro bono hours during that time. That does not mean that 1 million displaced people will receive 1 pro bono hour. It just means that different signatories utilize different metrics to track their impact. But collectively, we can see that the signatories to the pledge have the resources, expertise, and commitment to meaningfully advance access to rights, justice, and solutions for and with displaced people around the world. Since the GRF in December, PILNet and the core group have remained dedicated to strengthening connections between different signatories to ultimately build a more integrated and impactful legal community. Just last Thursday, close to 100 representatives of pledging organizations convened online to set the agenda for the 2023 Joint Legal Community Pledge. This gathering facilitated meaningful discussions, enabling members of the legal community to identify shared priorities and activities to implement at the local, regional, and global levels. For states, NGOs, and other representatives here today interested in joining or supporting this initiative, we welcome your engagement as we seek to put the power of the law to work with and for refugees everywhere. Thank you so much.
Thank you much. Oxfam International is next, followed by the UN Special Representative of the Secretary General on Violence Against Children. Oxfam, please.
Sorry, I hadn't requested to speak, so please pass to the next speaker.
Okay. Representative, are you ready to take the floor?
Thank you very much.
Here it is.
Okay. On behalf of the Special Representative of the Secretary General on Violence Against Children, Dr. Najat Mala Mjid, we would like to thank you, Mr. Chair, for the excellent work and the support we have been receiving, and also to thank the Assistant Secretary General for Protection for the commitment on the work we have been doing together to support the voices of children, including in the last year. Following the pledge and the joint pledge we did with UN sister agencies and the civil society group, the special representative who supported the dialogue of children during the ERF was committed to continue supporting the dialogue of refugee children in different settings within the UN system. And this is how we supported the 55th Human Rights Council session of the intergenerational dialogue, bringing refugee children to explain what are the challenges and the opportunities they are seeing ahead regarding their situation. For this, we would like to thank you for your collaboration and the role you have been playing. And also we would like to ensure that in the future situations of the ERF and the Human Rights Council, the voices of children are not in parallel events, but in the plenary. Thank you very much.
Thank you much, and our best regards to the Special Representative. I think we lost Oxfam for the moment. Newcomers with disabilities in Sweden online. Are you ready to take the floor?
Yes, thank you,
Please.
His Excellency. Permit me to thank you and the Assistant High Commissioner for the for your remarks.
Te
It
dire
was
que
really
j'ai eu
good
l'ONA
and enriching. I would
et
like to
ils
use
me
this
disent que
opportunity
leur rapport cette année
to
va
thank
encore être
the
associé à celui du
to
MFA.
thank UNHCR Task Force.
Donc, il faut suivre la sortie. Alors, en me parlant, il est allé voir sur le site et il me dit, apparemment, c'est pas sorti. Mais comme il revenait de vacances, il n'était pas trop sûr. Mais c'est là-dessus qu'il y aura les données de l'ONA. Ils sont encore dans le rapport MFA cette année, eux.
Sorry, I think there's a bit of a soundtrack issue here.
Pause for a minute.
Well, just give us a moment, please.
Again.
Are we okay? Let's try this again. I apologize to the representative of newcomers with disabilities in Sweden. We had a sound issue. Can you hear me? Can you try to start again with your intervention?
Yes, is it okay now?
Let's try. I'm not sure. Let's try. Sorry for that.
No worries. Okay, thank you, His Excellency, for giving me the floor. I would like to thank you and the Assistant High Commissioner for a very good remarks, opening remarks. Newcomers with disability in Sweden want to thank the task team of UNHCR for organizing a very wonderful and enriching GRF. We know it takes a lot of hard work to achieve such result. We took with keen note the number of stateless and displaced persons that attended the GRF of 2024, 12 out of the 102 people that stateless and displaced persons that were in the plenary. This number is a good step in the right direction, but very little. We know it's difficult, but we would like to encourage member states to consider including stateless and displaced persons in their delegation during the next GRF. This number would not have been achieved without the support of UNHCR, especially the Disability Inclusion Unit of Ricardo. We use this opportunity also to thank the age, gender, and inclusion group, which also stood by us, and also my colleagues at the advisory board. I also like to thank Peruvian for her hard work and dedication to the stateless and displaced people all over the world. She will be highly missed, and I wish her all the best in her future endeavor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and sorry again for the difficulties in the beginning. Do I see Japan asking for the floor?
Yes, indeed.
You have it.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you, His Excellency. Thank you, the Assistant High Commissioner and the GRF team for your presentation. I think the GRF was indeed an important opportunity to affirm the need for the international community to come together to protect displaced people, especially women and children, in humanitarian crises around the world. The multi-stakeholder pledge was a good approach as it embodied the whole of society approach, and the presence of the multi-stakeholder pledge will facilitate future follow-up. As the distinguished colleagues from Jordan and Uganda said, commitment should not be just a word. It should be properly implemented. At the GRF, Japan made several commitments, including on the situation of the Rohingya and Afghanistan. And we have already launched a new project in Bangladesh and Iran in February as a follow-up to the GRF. As the Humanitarian Development Peace Nexus Multi-Stakeholder Pledge, we held meetings in February and March. Thank you to all stakeholders who participated. By listening to a wide range of stakeholders, Japan will continue to work with you to make tangible difference in the humanitarian situation. Last but not least, I would like to express our deep appreciation to Parveen Ali for her continued cooperation. Without having your support and guidance, I had escaped from huge task as one of the co-convening country of the GRF. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Japan. I have one speaker on the list left at this point. I'm not totally sure about the name, and I hope the High Commissioner will forgive my bad Italian, but I think it's Associazione Mosaico Azioni per i Rifugiati. Are you online? Can you take the floor?
Merci, Excellence. Je voulais saisir cette occasion pour remercier le HCR au niveau international et au niveau local pour cet espace qui met ensemble des décideurs, la société civile et nous qui essayons d'apporter le vécu, nous réfugiés. Moi, je suis Nzonza Bertin, réfugié en Italie, ça fait pratiquement 2 ans, je suis à Turin. Et ensemble, avec certains amis avec qui on a fait ce parcours accueilli à Turin, nous avons mis en place une association donc dénommée Mosaïque Action pour les réfugiés pour être utile à tous ceux qui sont en train d'arriver après nous. Et j'aimerais ici sincèrement vous dire qu'au niveau de Turin, nous travaillons en parfaite harmonie avec le HCR, avec qui nous portons ensemble la dimension du pacte d'intégration que HCR a signé avec certaines villes ici à Turin, en Italie. Mon intervention va se focaliser sur 2 aspects. Le premier aspect, c'est sur l'autonomie des réfugiés. À mon avis, quand on parle de l'autonomie des réfugiés, je crois que vous l'avez, dans le document, vous l'avez essayé un peu de l'aborder. Il serait souhaitable que, quand on parle de l'autonomie, qu'on mette l'accent sur la participation active des réfugiés. Parce que généralement, dans beaucoup de pays occidentaux, le réfugié est vu comme un objet, au lieu d'être un sujet actif. Et c'est pourquoi j'aimerais proposer dans le futur, s'il ne serait pas souhaitable, de mettre sur place un fonds qui pourra soutenir des organisations mises en place par des réfugiés. Parce que généralement, ils butent pour trouver un peu de fonds, de ressources pour mener en avant leur action, pour être beaucoup plus utiles au pays d'accueil. Et le deuxième aspect que j'aimerais évoquer, c'est sur la mutualisation des pratiques, des bonnes pratiques. Et là également, il serait souhaitable dans des pays où les groupes, les associations de réfugiés, ils sont en train de mener en avant certaines actions. Il serait mieux de créer une synergie avec toutes les associations dans différents pays qui essaient d'être utiles un peu à la communauté. Et c'était ça un peu mon intervention. Merci.
Merci beaucoup. Do we have any other requests for the floor at this point? If not, and before I hand over to the Assistant High Commissioner for her concluding remarks, I feel very much like a latecomer, but I actually had it in my notes here to thank Paveen for your fantastic work. I learned from my notes that you started out, at least in this part of your work life, in the New York Declaration on Refugees and Migrants, which I, for different reasons, remember very well. So it was wonderful to find you again in Geneva. Thank you very much. I can vouch for the whole Swiss delegation and many others. The cooperation was fantastic. We always felt in very safe hands in the very complicated preparations, not complicated, complex and time consuming, but ultimately very successful preparations of the forum. Thank you very much to you and your family. Whatever comes next, good luck and all the success you really deserve. Raveen, back to you.
Thank you, Excellency. And thank you to all the participants for all your different interventions. I should like to respond to some of these questions, and then I'll obviously ask Parveen and Ziad as well to step in and complement what I have to say. D'abord, je voudrais remercier la France de mettre en valeur la cause des réfugiés en assurant la représentation d'un réfugié aux Jeux Olympiques. On est très reconnaissant de ça. On a aussi pris note de l'importance de la diversité des mobilisations de ressources ou des bailleurs de fonds. Sachez que nous, on œuvre à cet égard et on essaye bien sûr d'élargir notre champ le nombre de bailleurs de fonds qu'on a, les traditionnels, mais aussi les non traditionnels, c'est-à-dire dans le secteur privé, la Banque mondiale, les autres institutions financières internationales et régionales aussi. Et bien sûr, on va continuer dans ces efforts dans ce domaine. To Jordan, yes, I agree. There is indeed, we are concerned by obviously the decrease in humanitarian funding. Perhaps not really so much a decrease, but the multiplicity of humanitarian crises, which basically mean that our funding cannot keep up with them. Just to point out that just last year, UNHCR responded to 43 new emergencies. That was literally one every 8 days. So you can imagine that our resources are strained, and so are the resources of our traditional fund donors. But we are working very hard to ensure that there is no significant gap in terms of our funding humanitarian operations, particularly the ones certainly for countries like Jordan, which have been hosting refugees for protracted periods of time. We also take note, of course, and agree with you on the importance of durable solutions, whether it's third country solutions or the voluntary return in conditions of safety and dignity to their countries of origin. Turning to Uganda and the very, very impassioned plea, absolutely agree, pledges really should be, it should equal real commitment. These are not just letters written on a document. They are really an engagement and certainly should be considered as such. We will, of course, and I will turn to Ziad and Parvin on this one as well, on the issue of naming and perhaps not naming and shaming, but reporting back through our country officers in regard to specific pledges undertaken by either the governments or entities in that country and the progress or lack thereof, and reporting back on it so as to ensure that the entities and governments concerned actually do take timely action regarding implementation. We take that into consideration as well. To Japan, perhaps, thank you very much again for underlining the importance of the implementation of the pledges. And we do appreciate all your roles, both France, Jordan, and Japan, for your role as co-conveners of the last Global Refugee Forum, and really the very, very critical and key role that you have played in that regard. Turning now to some of the non-state entities that have made interventions. ILO, thank you once again for hosting us, for agreeing to host the rest of our informal briefings here as well. And we underline. This has been a meeting that's been plagued with different issues. I hope this is not going to be symbolic of the follow-up to the GCR. But I do want to repeat my thanks to ILO for hosting this meeting and for agreeing to host the following informal briefings as well. And yes, we take due note of the guidance on access to labor markets, including for refugee populations. And we also agree with you on the importance of mapping the pledges. And we are extremely encouraged by the importance you place on your role as co-lead for some of the multi-stakeholder pledges as well. OHCHR, absolutely agree. There is no hierarchy of pledgers. Each pledge, whether small or big, is equally important. And the engagement and commitment behind those pledges is equally important as well. We take note of the platform of independent experts on refugee rights. Absolutely a very key development and something that we in UNHCR would personally be interested in engaging in as well. And we also take note of your commitment to the UN Common Pledge, along with the other UN entities that engaged in regard to that pledge. Silex, really impressive, 116 signatories for the multi-stakeholder pledge, absolutely amazing. Totally agree with you when you said this is really the power of the law to work for refugees. Hats off to you for really having generated that amount of enthusiasm and interest. And we are deeply appreciative of all of the implications of what this pledge means in terms of the many hours of legal assistance to asylum seekers and refugees who are in sore need of it in many countries across the globe. So thank you very much for that. The SRSG for Violence Against Children, you have always played a very, very critical role in regard to refugee issues, particularly, of course, those relating to refugee children. And we are extremely happy that you are going to be working with us in the context of this follow-up as well. Newcomers with disabilities in Sweden, we take note, and we totally agree on the issue of refugee participation and certainly the participation of refugees with disabilities. And I'm sure our GRF team will be taking this into account when planning the next GRF as well. I think that pretty much concludes the interventions or my responses, but I will hand the floor to Parveen and Ziad for any comments they may wish to make. Over to you.
Thank you very much, and thank you all for the very kind words. It's very much appreciated. I'm really going to miss being in this role. It's been such a profound experience in so many ways, and it's hard to let it go as well. But I just also wanted to thank you for the updates and the mention of the many multi-stakeholder pledges that you're leading. I think there are a lot of questions now about what this really means in practice. We hope through the process that we've outlined in the high-level officials meeting roadmap that we'll be able to take these forward, because really it's at the country level, as our colleague from Uganda said. You know, it's really at the country level where we can assess progress, where we can see what's needed to implement the policy commitments, what the challenges or obstacles are, what support could be garnered through the multi-stakeholder pledge arrangements, what support could be garnered through the UN country team or other country level mechanisms, and how we can best facilitate that and report on progress. So this is very much the focus and the aim of the country-focused follow-up. And we will be working with the leaders of all the multi-stakeholder pledges quite regularly over the next 2 years to really make sure that we make those links very clearly and are able to showcase follow-up. I also just wanted to flag that for many of the multi-stakeholder pledges, such as the legal community pledge, they speak to a number of the GCR objectives, right? I mean, one of the metrics for measuring easing pressures is looking at the broadened base of support, the deepened basis of support through our partnerships. And it might be interesting to think about reporting and speaking to the work of the pledge a bit more at the next briefing, which will be focused on easing pressures. But just as critically, the pro bono pledge also speaks to the protection environment that's necessary to facilitate inclusion in national systems. So we would encourage all of the leaders of the partnerships pledges, the protection pledges, and the situational ones to think about which of the upcoming 3 informal briefings they might like to feature their pledge in, to speak about what they hope to achieve over the next 2 years, and to encourage others to join in the process. I'll turn it over to Ziad in case you have any.
Thank you, Praveen, and thank you, everyone, for the very insightful comments. I also have to echo on behalf of the GCR coordination team, Praveen, our thanks to you as well, and wishing you nothing but the best in your path forward. I mean, many of the comments have been responded to, but maybe I'll just say 2 very quick things. One on reporting. Mary, as you rightfully said, the reporting process will continue to be a light process. We have a variation of a mechanism now in comparison to last time. So we'll continue to have the reporting process of individual follow-up twice a year and on a continuous enrolling basis. We haven't forgotten about 2019 GRF pledges. We will continue to reach out to those pledges as well. So if you do have pledges from the first GRF, the assumption is not that we've moved on, we've folded over and we've forgotten those. We'll continue. In fact, the next round of updates is on this. But as Praveen was saying now, the multi-stakeholder pledges themselves will serve as probably the best accountability mechanisms we could have at the moment, focused around a common goal, a common ambition with a clear timeline. And it's a function of all the pledges that are made as a result of it. So hopefully that will be the basis of it. And it emphasizes and speaks to the importance of really thinking tactfully and strategically in terms of the work plans against the various multi-stakeholder pledges themselves, as Praveen was saying, really trying to identify what the ambitions are, come up with a bit of a game plan over the next 2 years in cooperation with the respective focal points between UNHCR and as well as externally. We remain at your disposal, and we welcome any comments and feedback you may have to the roadmap as well as to the outcome document. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Perrin and Ziad. Before we conclude this meeting, I'd just like to bring one other item to your attention. Many of you will recall that the results of the 2019 high-level segment on statelessness were embedded fully in the GRF follow-up process, and the same will obviously be replicated moving forward. With the 10-year I Belong campaign coming to an end later this year, to reinforce our collective commitment to end global statelessness, I want to draw your attention to a new global initiative, the Global Alliance to End Statelessness, that will be launched during a high-level event, a high-level segment on statelessness that will be convened during XCOM in October this year. Since the 2023 GRF, several states have already pledged to engage or have confirmed their membership of the Global Alliance. We call on other states to consider joining this initiative as well, to work to advance existing pledges to end statelessness and to develop new bold commitments in the lead up to the upcoming high-level segment. So that's really what I wanted to say, and to really bring your attention to this important event that will be happening in October this year. But before closing, allow me to also add my words of thanks and to pay tribute to our outgoing head of the GCR coordination team, Parveen, whose tenure will be coming to an end in early April, as I said previously. Parveen's impact has been nothing short of profound. She not only led the GRF process with unparalleled dedication, but also played a pivotal role in laying the legal groundwork that brought the GRF to fruition, starting from the conceptual stage to its eventual affirmation through the New York Declaration and the Global Compact on Refugees, as the Ambassador has also highlighted. What began as an idea has flourished into a fully endorsed, tried and tested global process, thanks in large part to Parveen's unwavering commitment. So through her tireless efforts, we witnessed the birth of a transformative process with the potential to profoundly impact the lives of refugees, forcibly displaced individuals, and the communities that graciously host them. Parveen, your impact will be remembered, and on behalf of UNHCR and the larger GRF family, thank you. With that, I think the Ambassador would join me in thanking all of you for your engagement today. And on this note, we conclude the first quarterly informal briefing on the GCR. Thank you. That was short and sweet. I know.